So I thought for this crafty challenge I would try to make a mini book. Mostly because I thought if I could make a good one it would be a really lovely addition to my literary figurines. The current books are very basic. They're just a little bit of craft card with a few cut pages in that are just glued in, and I thought a more fancy book would really finish off these figurines. So I have found a tutorial online and I'll put the link in the video description. The miniature book is made by Tiny Craft World. Now there's no instructions on the tutorial other than a brief bit in the description. There's just a little bit of music whilst they make. The text in the description tells me that I need a few bits and pieces. I've never made a mini book before, but we'll see how it goes. So it says I need some normal printer paper, which I have here. It doesn't say how much I need, but I have one sheet of regular printer paper. It also says I need some heavy cardstock, which I believe is for the covers. This is just some offcuts of card that I've got handy, and I hope that's thick enough. I might need thicker, but we'll figure that one out as I go. It says I'll need some fabric glue, which I have here, and it says I'll need some Mod Podge, which I also have here. It also says I need some fabric, but I was considering covering the outside of these books with some leftover marbled paper. This marbled paper was handmade by the Whimsical Marbler, and I'll put a link in the video description for their website as well. I'd made some roses out of the marbled paper, and these are just little bits and bobs from my scrap leftovers. But anyway, I thought they'd be quite nice to cover the books with. So the description, it also says I need some coffee. Doesn't everybody? So I ground some coffee beans earlier and I made some fresh Machu Picchu coffee and I drank half of it. Your eyes are not deceiving you. This is a small 1 cup cafetiere. The instructions don't actually specify if you need ground coffee or instant. And the question was also posed, could you use tea? So I might try that as well. It also says that you'll need some sandpaper. Well, I've got some in the garage, so I'll fetch that in a bit when I need it. What else? You also need, as I've watched it already, a needle and some thread. It doesn't say what sort of thread you do need, but I've got some regular sewing thread here and some embroidery thread. But I'll figure that out again when I get there. This is my little needle book that my daughter made for me when she was about 8 years old, and it's still going. It's over 10 years old, so it's almost vintage, just like me. So I guess I'll need a fairly decent sized needle. So yeah, so let's get started. I'm going to watch it and make along with it, and let's see how we do. So the first step is to cut the paper, so let me just move all of this out of the way. And I also seem to need a pencil and a ruler, which I haven't got to hand as it didn't say so in the description, so I'll just go and fetch those. Right, so we have to measure out 2.5 centimetres. That's a little bit smaller than I think I'd like my book to be. So, So I think I'm going to make my book a little bit bigger. Let's see now. What's that? Let's say 3.3. Yeah, I think that will work a little bit better for me. And I think we need 5 strips. I don't know if I'll get 5 strips from this paper now. I've already done a smaller one, but let's see. So we want 3.3, 3.3, 3.3, and 3.3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and the other side, 3.3, 3.3, 3.3. I suppose I could use a guillotine for this. In the video they're using a craft knife, but I don't have a metal ruler to hand, so I'll probably just use a pair of scissors. I think I'll use the big scissors for these. Right, so I've got 5 strips. For the next step we need to measure out a 4.5 centimetre strip for the book pages, but I think I'm going to do 6 centimetres as I have increased the size of my book a little bit. So yeah, let's go 6, 12, 18, 24. I might need a little bit more paper if this isn't going to be enough, but we shall see. So I have to do this on all of the strips of paper. I don't have quite enough room for another page, but never mind. Let's just get rid of that end piece. They're not measuring it on these strips, they're just using one of the other strips to use as a template. Am I supposed to be keeping all these in order? These are not all particularly straight, but we shall see how it turns out. So they are putting 5 of these rectangles together. Each of my strips has only given me 4, mostly because I increased the size to suit my needs. So I'm going to do this with 4. So basically I need to take 4 together, and we just want to fold them in half. Let's just trim that up a bit, it's not particularly straight. And they're using a peg to hold them together like this. So I'm going to end up with 5 sets of pages. And after I've folded them, I just need to clip them together with the peg. I mean, they're not all lining up perfectly, but I guess that's what the sanding block is for afterwards. Okay, so I need to really nicely line these up if I can, and mark on them with a pencil where I'm going to stitch. There's no proper instruction on where to make this little mark, but this kind of looks okay. I'm just trying to make it the same distance in either end. So the next stage seems to be poking the needle through. So I don't know if that needle I've chosen is going to be sharp enough to poke through the paper. So let's see. So I just need to poke it through the top, and that's easier said than done. And I just need to do that twice on each of these 5 pieces of paper. I've never done bookbinding or anything like this before, so this is all brand new to me, so we'll see how it goes. Okay, so it looks like the video is just using regular sewing thread. I'm going to need a different needle again because I think the eye is too big on the sharp needle that I used to poke through the paper. So let's have a look. I think that one will do fine. Okay, so I need to thread the needle. So I don't know how much thread I need, so let's take about that much, I guess. Do I need it double threaded? I don't know. I'll check that in a second. Right, yes, I do need to have it double threaded. So I think this is where it's going to get a little bit complicated for me. I'll just tie the knot in there. Not that tying the knot is complicated, I think the actual binding bit is going to be complicated. Right, I need to take the first set of pages. Right, so we need to go in through the top, and I need to leave a little bit of thread and then go in from the bottom. And then they are putting the needle through the loose thread. And then pull it tight. So there you have that bit. My first bit is done. Okay, so what they do next is they loop the thread through here, and it looks to be about 4 times. And then we just fold this up and pick up the next little set of pages. Okay, so for this next bit of book we need to push it through the top and then push it through the bottom. And then we loop it. Do we loop it through? No, we need to poke it through the very first hole. And no, we need to loop through. We need to sew through the second hole of the first book and then the first hole of the first book. Yeah. And I'm in a little bit of a pickle. Right, okay. I think we might just need to repeat the process for all of them. I think that's right. No. I'm getting in a little bit of a pickle again. Okay. I think it's quite important to make sure that your thread is pulled quite tight. And this is the reality of tutorials, so if you do have a go at my flowers, then do let me know how you get on. I really have tried to make my tutorials clear, but I'm also aware that because of my fatigue I sometimes forget little bits or say the wrong word, so yeah, do let me know how you get on. This is quite fiddly. Right, okie dokie, let's get this very last set of pages in place, and then we might be able to move on to a more exciting part. So I think now I need to pull everything nice and tight. So I did feel like I was getting into the rhythm of that a little bit at the end. But yeah, okay, let's see how we finish this little booklet off now. So it looks like the thread is kind of pushed through the previous threads a couple of times. That's easier said than done. Okay. So then they're pushing the thread up through the top part. I guess that's just for a little bit of extra security. Oh no, I've got another little thready knotty thing going on. Ugh. Alright. Alright, I think that's it, so I'll cut it off now. Well, you know, it's a little bit uneven. I think I've got to trim that up a little bit now. Yeah, I think I will. I will just tidy it up a little bit. I probably would be better off using a craft knife here. But, you know, I think, you know, for my first attempt, it's not awful. I mean, it could have been worse. So this next stage, and I'm not sure what they're using exactly, but they're using a little bit of fabric on the back of the binding. So I've got a little offcut of ribbon, which I'm going to cut in half. Now it doesn't say if they're going to use the Mod Podge or the fabric glue for this bit. I'm going to presume that they're using the fabric glue, and my fabric glue hasn't been opened in many months, so let's have a look at what sort of state it's in. Right, I'm going to brush it onto the spine, I guess. So we'll pop the fabric glue on the binding, and we've got to take the little bit of fabric just covering the binding that we've just done. I suppose that adds just a little bit of extra strength. It doesn't say how long to leave it to dry, or even if we need to leave it to dry, so I'll just pop that on there and we'll see how that one goes. Okay, this next stage we are sanding the pages. I've got my sanding block and sandpaper. That works quite well. I've never thought of using sandpaper like this before. I might do this in the future if I need it for something. Yeah. Well. Yeah, I'm quite impressed with that. Yeah. Right, I'm going to just clear up my desk a little bit before we move on to the next stage. So now we're going to need the coffee, and I'm just going to put down a sheet of plastic just to prevent any spills. Not that it's going to prevent any spills, but it will catch anything that might fall down. My reflection showing up. So we'll pour a little bit of coffee into this tub. That does smell good. So they're using some tweezers. Perhaps I should do the same. You know, I found a few items of equipment that we've needed that weren't detailed, so yeah, I guess that's fine because most things are to hand. So now it's a case of dipping it into the coffee. They haven't said for how long to leave it, or, you know, but let's go for it. Let's just go for it. It's not absorbing terribly quickly. I don't know if I'm supposed to be separating the pages up like this or not. It is quite hard to separate these pages. Well, not hard, but it's not easy. Okay, there's not many more to do now. I don't actually know if I'm supposed to be separating out the pages, but I want all of the pages to be coloured, don't I? I genuinely don't know, so we'll see how it turns out. Right, okay, out you come. And we've lost the ribbon on the back already, so that probably needed to be left to dry. I've got to squeeze out the coffee. And then they kind of open it up from the middle, and then squidging up the book pages a little bit. Well, okay, my book pages aren't squidging up like theirs. So yeah, I'm trying to lift them up so that they're a little bit curled, or as if their old pages kind of curled upwards, and it's not really working. The pages are very much clumped together. I mean, is that okay? I guess. I mean, that might work. Okay, let's just kind of call it there. Yeah. Straighten these ones out a little bit. Okay. Right, okay, so the next stage is to curl up the corners of some of the pages. That's easier. That's a lot easier to do. Yeah. I just need to get them in the tweezers and lift them up a little bit. Yeah, I quite like that. Yeah, I think that's okay. I think that's goodish. So I clearly have to leave this to dry before I move on to the next stage. I'm not quite sure where the best place is to leave it or for how long, so I'm just going to leave it overnight and I will get back to you. So I have decided this morning that I am going to make a couple more mini books, and that I'm going to try staining one with tea, and I'm going to try staining one with some watery paint. The reason I've decided this is because the mini book that has dried reeks of coffee. Now I love coffee, but I don't know that I really want my figurine smelling of coffee, so I thought I would try making some more, and this time, as you can see, I'm going to adjust a few of the processes. So one of the things I changed was I'm cutting the strips with the guillotine so that they're a little bit more even in the first place. And the next bit was all very straightforward. I just cut the paper with the scissors for the smaller strips. When it came to assembling the individual pages, I folded the first page and then I folded the second page and the third page. Oh yeah, I only had three pages in each section on this one, but when I put the 3 pages together, you can already see that the inside pages are sticking out a little bit further, which is to be expected, but at this stage I trimmed them up rather than leaving it until the book was all together. and the marking up was pretty much the same. The only other thing I did slightly differently was when I was pushing the needle through to make the holes in the first place, I didn't bother putting them in the peg. I thought that was an unnecessary part, really. I couldn't see the benefit of that, so I just laid them out flat in front of me so they were easy to pick up, a little bit less faff. The sewing part I found a lot easier once I got into the rhythm of it all, and I was really happy with that. So these books were a little bit smaller and thinner because I was just trying it out. So I had my 2 extra little books, and I had decided one was going in tea. And so I made a cup of tea. I don't drink tea. I did wait for the water to cool down before this stage, and then I just dipped the little book in the tea, and it didn't do very much straight away. It didn't seem to absorb as quickly as the coffee. And separating the pages was okay. Some of them are clumped together and some of them hadn't. But you know, you can see as I pull the book out, it's really not stained the book at all. Maybe I needed to have stronger brewed tea. So I then took the tea bag and decided to press it all over the pages to see if that helped. And I think it did help. So either I needed to leave the tea bag to stew for longer, or I just need to squeeze the tea bag onto the pages. So I was using fewer bits of paper, and I found it equally as difficult to actually curl up the pages. But I did manage to do it, and I found that laying it flat on the table made it a lot easier to curl up the pages. As for the paint, well, to start with, I made up some what I thought was watery paint, and it wasn't very watery. You can see on the little book on the bottom left there, it was dark brown. So I watered it down even more, gave it a stir, dunked it in with the tweezers. And the end result was it basically didn't absorb any of the colour. It did a little, and perhaps I should have used a yellow ochre instead of a brown, but it just didn't absorb. It was the wrong sort of paper for this, I think, but you know, for the sake of trying and experimenting, nothing's a disaster. Nothing's a waste of time, right? So anyway, back to the first book. So to make the cover, I have to just draw around the mini book that has dried, leaving a few millimeters gap, it looks like. And I need to cut it so that it is just slightly bigger than one half of the book. Some measurements would have been good here. I think if I was doing it, I probably would give out some templates. I also need to cut a little slither for the spine. I don't really know how much to cut, so yeah, let's just see what happens. Okay, so it looks like I need to mount it onto the marbled paper. They're mounting theirs onto fabric. So I'll add the glue, press it down, leaving a margin, because we need to fold the paper over the edge. I don't know, is that a big enough edge? I think half the fun of crafting is finding your own way of doing things that other people have done, and it's not always about directly copying, and sometimes it is, because sometimes you need to learn processes, but once you've learnt the processes you can adapt them and make them your own. Right, so I think now I need to fold the edges over. Everything's moving and sliding about, and I don't think I've really got much to fold over. That's not really enough, is it? It's not staying down. Yeah, not sure that's really working for me. Right, let's start again. Let's make it slightly bigger. Let's give them a slightly bigger margin, I suppose. I can't think of the right words. And I think I'm going to use my high-tack glue as well, because that will make sure that the edges stay stuck down. PVA is great for most jobs, but sometimes you just need a high-tack glue. Okay. So I'll put my high-tack glue around the edges, and they fold in the top and the bottom first. So see that? It just stays down. High-tack glue, PVA. No contest. Press it down. Oh look, it stays down. Right, so we need to fold the ends over, and they're doing something fancy with the corner of the fabric, but I think I'll just trim. Yeah, I think I'll just trim the corners off. Let's see what happens. Yeah, yeah, we'll cut the corners just so we don't have any overhang. And ta-da! Oh look, press it down, it stays there. If you've never used high-tack glue, I'm fairly sure that once you've tried it, you might not go back. Ta-da! Okay, so what's next? So next I need to put one side of the book on the front cover and one side of the book on the back cover, and the spine, it looks like it will just fall into place. So we'll use the high-tack glue again. I should have probably have kept the page at the back completely flat, because yeah, that's not great. Right, now I've got to try and fold this spine so that I can glue the back cover on. Yeah, let's pinch the spine, it might hold it in place. And this bit's quite fiddly. I thought the sewing was fiddly, but this bit's quite fiddly as well. Sorry there, going off camera, but need to concentrate. Okay, so this is the little book, we've got it together. The spine is a bit strange, doing something weird. I think I might just hold that together with the peg to see if that makes a better shape. But I mean, it's cute-ish, I think. Yeah. It does still stink of coffee. So I need to make covers for the books that have dried from the tea and from the paint. So it's a similar process, and so I did make sure that I left a big gap around at the start, and so I kind of folded the spine in place before I glued the pages down, and I think this made quite a big difference. As you can see, as I'm gluing this one together, the spine automatically has fallen into a spine kind of shape. So yeah, I'm going to summarise for you now. So the idea was that if I could make a nice enough book that it could go on some of my literary figurines and replace the rubbishy little books that I've been making. And so they're about the same size as the current books that I'm making. And if you look, I think they'll work quite well. I think the next figurine is going to have a nice little posh book. So the first one was coffee, the second one is tea, and the third one was paint. Now you can also print out little bits of book page to put on. The coffee one still smells of coffee, and some of the under pages aren't very stained. I might have to Mod Podge those down, and the spine on the first one is pretty dodgy, but you know, I've learned what I need to do to make a better spine. This one still got wet glue, but the spine looks really good. And this one is the tea. The coffee pages are definitely darker than the tea. The tea looks good, but it doesn't smell like coffee, and that was the aim. So I'm not sure. I'm still undecided whether coffee is a good choice. Paint is not the good choice, but I'm glad I did this one because I really do like the spine on it. I think the spine, yeah, tick. So the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of paint around the edges of the paper. Now I thought I would use metallic gold, bronze. I've also got some rose gold kicking about somewhere. So I'll just show you me putting a little bit of this on, and let's see how hard it is. And you can see by the 3 books here, the coffee one is on the lower right and the tea one is on the top, and the painted pages, the acrylic paint pages, are on the left. If I was going for an old but not too old, I think tea would work very well. So I'm just been applying the gold paint and the rose gold paint here with a paintbrush. The coffee coloured one is being painted with a bronze edge, mostly because it was the darkest paint and I thought it would work with the darkest pages. And then the tea coloured one I decided to use the gold paint with. So here's the final results. This is the little coffee one, and I'm really sorry about the lighting. We've had a lot of rain here and everywhere is dark. So the coffee one, it's cute. The spine was not great, but I think that will work. I think that will work very well. And so this is the one that I used acrylic paint. You can see the spine looks great. The painting on the edge of the pages is okay. That was using the rose gold paint and that was really clumpy. Anyway, in conclusion, I found the process quite hard to start with, and then as I made a few other books for testing purposes, I kind of got into the rhythm of the binding, and the process was actually quite simple once you've learnt it. And there's a few things that I would have done differently. I would like to have sizes and measurements, and now I have because I've made them. I would make sure I had a few more book pages in the books, that I would bend the spines to start with, and I might even consider painting the edges of the book pages before I stick them in the book. So keep your eyes peeled, because I am working on a new literary figurine at the moment, and when she's ready for a book, she is going to get one of these little posh bound books, so we'll see how that one goes. Thank you for sticking with me on this really long, lengthy mini book binding journey. If you want to go and have a go at this tutorial, the link is in the video description for the original tutorial. And I hope maybe you've learned something from my mistakes of making this and my preconceived ideas of what I needed to do and what I needed to have in front of me. I'm waffling now. But yeah, if you've got an idea for a craft challenge that you would like to see me do let me know in the comments or via Instagram. The link for my Instagram is also in the video description and on my biography page. And if you've made it this far, if you just give me a little thumbs up, that would be absolutely fabulous. And if you'd like to see more of these, then hit subscribe, and then you'll be notified when a new one is published.